I've been a financial advisor now for over 20 years. And unfortunately, one of the most commonly overlooked aspects of retirement is also one of the most important. And it has to do with the 3 phases of retirement. Many folks have heard of the 3 phases of retirement, but I'm going to share something with you that I bet few people have ever told you before, and it's super important. So let's go for a walk. You know, the 3 phases of retirement, it starts off talking about the go-go years, the first years of retirement. And for most of us, the default is retiring at 65. But an important and overlooked aspect of this has to do with our health. And the World Health Organization did a study. They surveyed all 200 plus countries in the world, and they share with us important data about when we're likely going to lose our health. So let's look at this data. And I want to thank Jeff Nobbs for putting this together. The data from the World Health Organization is confusing. Jeff put it in this simple format. But essentially, this chart shows when people in certain countries are likely to have a major health issues. So let's start at the top here. And hopefully it's the U.S., but spoiler alert, it's probably not. The first country is Japan. And in Japan, people live to almost 75 until they lose their health, which is great. You know, that would give you a solid almost 10 years of retirement, of healthy retirement, if you retired at 64, 65. But unfortunately, that's not the U.S. Let's look at the next one. Is the next one the U.S.? Unfortunately, it's not. It's Singapore. Good for Singaporeans. They on average, make it to almost 74 until they have a major health issue. Let's look at the next one. The next one's unfortunately not the U.S. either. It's Korea. So let's look at the next. Unfortunately, it's not us. It's Switzerland. The Swiss take good care of themselves. They make it almost to 73 until they have health. But hopefully the next one's the U.S. It's not. Unfortunately, it's Cyprus. And the one after that is Israel. So hopefully the next one, because we're getting down close to 72, which only gives us 7 years of healthy time in retirement. Let's look at the next one. Unfortunately, the next one's not the United States either. It's Spain and France. So let's look at the next ones. Again, we're getting super close to 72. Unfortunately, it's not. It's Iceland and Italy. Unfortunately for Americans, good for Icelanders and Italians. So what about the next one? The next one is the United States. And I want you to look at that. It's 66.1 years. And what that means is the average person that retires at 65 gets 13 months in their go-go years before they develop a significant health issue. Maybe they have heart issues, they get a cancer diagnosis, something like that, something that prohibits them from taking full advantage of what I call the youth of your senior years. But maybe this is just a U.S. thing. Well, unfortunately, you know, at the 66 is not isolated to the United States. This article by the Financial Times says that fewer than 1 in 10 men in the United Kingdom is likely to reach retirement in good health, and retirement in the United Kingdom similar to the U.S. 65, 66. So only 10% of men in the UK reach retirement age in good health. What about women? The article goes on to say that fewer than 1 in 10 men and only 16% of women in the UK are likely to be in good health by the time they reach retirement. So most people's healthy life expectancy, they go on to say, falls far short of the state pension age, which is currently 66, and I guess in the UK they're raising it to 67 by 2028. So the situation is similar in the United States. Now, right now, I've shared earlier, you know, in the United States, most of us know this, the average retirement age is about 65, but let's look at the data. So if we look at 2016 to 2022, for people 42 to 44, how many people are retired? Most of us would guess very few, and we'd be right. It's about 1% in the United States. From 45 to 49, it's about 2%, so that's below 50. But what about as we enter our 50s? 50 to 54, it's only 6%. of people in the United States that are 50 to 54 are retired. And then 50 to 59, it's 11%. 60 to 64, which is kind of the last chance to retire early, 60 to 64 is 32%. And then 65 to 69, so that would be 70% of the people that are 65 to 69. Sorry, I printed this out too small. But it's really important data. So here in the United States, if we're going to lose our health, let's call it 65. If you want a decade of good health, unfortunately, the odds say that we probably should be looking to retire between 50 and 55. And here in the United States, right now, that's only 6% of people retire in that age group, 55 to 59. So, is 65 make sense? It could. It depends on how well you take care of your health. And then it also depends on your financial situation. So one of the things I like to tell my clients is we should plan on being ready for retirement 5 years before we actually want to retire. So if you're thinking you want to retire at 65, hopefully this video is giving you some things to think about. But if you think you want to retire at 65, my counsel would be, and none of this is financial advice, I don't know your specific situation, but I think it's a good idea to try to get to your financial goal 5 years before you think you want to retire. And why is that? According to a recent Goldman Sachs survey, almost half of people are forced to retire before they get to age 65. And maybe that's because you got laid off from work, right? Ageism is a real thing. Maybe it's because you lost your health, or maybe it's because you have to take care of aging parents or an adult child that needs your help. So believe it or not, almost half of us are not going to be able to work as long as we had planned. So I think it's wise to be in your financial situation 5 years ahead of time if you can. And, the nice thing about that is if you're in that situation, then you can look at your health and say, have I been able to take care of myself? What's my situation at work? How stressful is my job? And is it likely that I'm going to have 10 healthy years in retirement? Now, none of us know. I mean, full disclosure, I've got some early stage heart issues. So that's one thing that I have to look at. And I have a family history of that. My uncle died before he turned 60. My father had his first heart attack before he was 60. Fortunately, he survived and got 20 more good years before, unfortunately, he passed away from heart disease. So look at your health situation. Where are you and what can you do? Whether you're 30, 40, 50, or you're 70, what can you do to stay as healthy as you can? Because again, I've been a financial advisor for over 20 years. I can share with you that all of my clients that have done well, once they lose their health, they would exchange the vast majority of their wealth to be healthy again. Because your health is so much more important. I think they're both important, but once your health is gone, it's hard to enjoy the money that you worked hard to save. So what do we do? Number one, take care of your health. Number two, think about retiring at 55 instead of 65. And if at all possible, try to get there financially 5 years before. So if this video's had an impact and you start thinking about it and say, you know what, it would be nice to be able to retire early and to increase my likelihood of having 10 healthy years in retirement. So let's say you say the goal is 55. Well, try to get there at 50. And this way, if you're still loving life, if you're still loving your job, if you're able to pursue the passions that you have outside of work, then maybe you keep working to 55. But maybe you think about slowing down at 50. And one of the challenges is, what are we going to do if we're not working? And, a lot of people tell me they don't want to retire because they don't have anything that they enjoy more than work. And if that's your situation, there's really two ways to look at that. One is that's a great situation to be in, that you love your job so much. The other way that I'd encourage you to think about, even if you say you love your job, is It would be nice to have something outside of work that you enjoy as much as work. And so not only think about taking care of your health, but think about taking care of your mental health as well, your passions. So think about, what gets you excited in the morning outside of work? What part of you could you identify with that gives you as much joy and as much pride as the work as you identify as an employee? So what is there outside of work that gives you a passion? The third thing is, it's important to save. It's crazy to think, but here in the United States, fewer than half the people making over $100,000 a year save anything. Over half of all Americans making over $100,000 a year don't save a dime. And, it's going to be hard to reach your financial goals if you don't save, because the first step in creating wealth is, no matter how much you're making, we need to spend less than what we make. And it's not enough to just save. If you're a good saver, I applaud you for that. But also think about investing, because compounding, having our money work harder for us each and every year, compounding cuts both ways. Compounding benefits us if we're receiving a rate of return higher than inflation. But if we're right at inflation or lower, which is primarily what you get with that warm and cozy feeling of having your money in an FDIC insured bank account, essentially, for the most part, historically, you get pretty close to the rate of return of inflation, oftentimes less. If you're getting less than inflation, then compounding's working against you. Each year, your money's working less hard for you than the year before. And I don't want that for you. I want your money to work harder for you each and every year. And then when it comes to investing, over 80% of your investment success and investment returns is going to have to do with your asset allocation. What percent of your portfolio is in stocks? What percent's in bonds? And because it's so critically important, I do encourage you to work with a fee-only financial advisor, somebody who's a fiduciary to you 100% of the time, that's working in your best interest, that knows your situation, and can help you decide what asset allocation is right for you. Because, I know people that save 20, 30%, but if they don't have the right asset allocation, they'd be better off saving a little bit less and getting that asset allocation right so that their money is working as hard for them as possible, but not so hard that if the market corrects 30, 40, 50%, which it could, the stock market. That happened during the great financial crisis. From peak to trough, from the top to the bottom, the S&P 500 was down almost 60%. And during the first 4 weeks of COVID, again, peak to trough, I think it was February 19th was the high for the S&P 500 before the COVID outbreak, February 19th of 2019. The S&P 500 was down just a little over 33%, 1/3. So in 4 weeks, and that'll take your breath away. So I don't want you to have so much exposure to stock that events like that cause you to become a forced seller in a down market because of the mental pain. It's not just worrying about your stocks, but the word I use is angst. You can't sleep at night. You just want the pain to stop. And that's not a good situation to be in. So, and another place, unfortunately, that's not a good situation to be in, that a lot of baby boomers find themselves in, is not being ready to retire. And that's why I made this video here. Baby boomers are in trouble. Something terrible is happening to baby boomers. So it's kind of part 2 to this. If you love a boomer, if you are a baby boomer, I encourage you to watch this video. I'll see you in there. Thanks for watching this one.